Hello everyone. Today we're going to make a little video. I only have 24 minutes left of video footage to show on my camera. Okay, well, since I only got 24 minutes, I'm going to explain the premise of the video. You are someone, I am someone else, and today we're going to be talking about why teachers don't make as much as other people. Teachers, right? Let's say there is a guy, right? Not a teacher, there's a different guy. He makes... Let's say he's a professional baseball player. He makes, what does a professional baseball player make? What, $500,000, $1 million a year? Because he can swing a bat really well. He can swing a bat at 90 miles an hour. The ball goes, he pitches the ball and he swings at it, and the ball is going 90. Not very many people have that skill to hit a ball at 90 miles per hour. So that is why he gets paid more. Not exactly, actually. That's not all the formula. It's not just the rarity of the skill and not the hardness of the skill that makes him get paid. It's the amount of people watching him that makes him get paid. So if there's less people watching him hit the ball at 90 miles an hour, he makes less money during that year. So salaries can be different depending on what year. There's always different contracts and all that stuff. Like with baseball players and football players and basketball players, they have contracts because they don't know they guess how many viewers they're going to have, and sometimes they have more or less, depending if the population grows or shrinks, or depending if the people like sports or not like sports. It all depends on what city you're in, obviously. What city you're playing for. But, yes. For the most part, the baseball player is going to make more than the average school teacher. And it always happens, right? We always see this baseball player and they say, oh, it's so unfair. His skill's not, quote unquote, as valuable as the teacher. And, well, you could say that, yes. But think about why the teacher's getting paid. Okay, so the teacher, they don't have viewers. They have, what do they call them? Students. They have students. Servants, I should say. These students, right, or pupils or whatever, right, they don't pay to go into school. In fact, some of them don't want to go in school at all. They hate school. They're not going to pay. They would rather you pay them for them to be in school. They don't want to be in school. These little children, these little monsters running around, right? They want to run around like a crazy, they're ADHD deficient, and you're forcing them to sit down and do some work, which is fine. But the problem is you're not going to get paid for it because the people you're supposedly supplying, or the people you're supposedly helping, don't want your help. And so that is why you don't make as much money as a teacher. They don't care during the actions of you helping them. And so that will always factor in the equation is, do the people voluntarily choose to go into that school? And if the answer is no, then don't be surprised that you don't make as much money. Especially as little kids that just want to run around and not sit still. Right? Just don't be surprised about that. And the government should not force people to pay more taxes for your standard of living. You have to go find a way. You have to lower your standard of living to meet the demand of what those kids want. Right? It's not the responsibility of the government to help you. Because government only uses force, just like a teacher, somewhat. Because, again, people don't want to pay taxes. People don't want to go to school. That is why you don't make as much money. It's the not wanting part of it. It has to be voluntary, like the baseball player, if you want to make money. Voluntary transactions always lead to more wealth, most of the time. Unless you're in a bureaucratic system like the military. When you're high ranking in the military, yes. At that point, you've done so much service that the government's willing to pay you a lot of money. And maybe tenured teachers as well, but very unlikely it's going to be teaching. It's mostly going to be some bureaucrat position like a politician or in the military. And again, they use taxes to fund it. So voluntarily, I don't think most Americans or some Americans are very peace-loving people. Not everyone's a warmonger like the Middle East makes us out to be, right? But we pay our military people very well. When they get their 20 years, they can get that pension for the rest of their life. So not only are they making money, but on top of that, they're going to be making money when they get out. And then they can make more money having a second job, or once they're out of the military, they can have a pension and that job on top of it, which is very nice. In fact, that's what my parents did. But, right? And a lot of people have been claiming, this is something that really infuriates me, that teachers get paid less because there are more females that pick pig teaching. No, 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 that's not how this works. Throughout all of human history, there's been some countries that even have male teachers, but even male teachers don't make that much money. If you look throughout history, if you read Wealth, Poverty, and Politics by Thomas Sowell, you guys need to read that book. I cannot stress to you much about human capital. Has nothing to do with the education level. Has absolutely nothing to do. There's a whole chapter saying that human capital and education are not the same. In fact, sometimes education can impede on human capital, and then sometimes it can demonize the human capital. You look at the liberal arts majors in the United States, they absolutely demonize human capital. I mean, you look at them and you're like, this is why people are so messed up. It's because they're getting taught the wrong things in school. They don't understand what human capital is. Human capital, well, I don't like the way Thomas Sowell defines it either in his book, where he talks about patents, because patents are forcefully, yes, they should recognize your invention. Yes, that is kind of cool. But you have a virtual monopoly for a few years because of that patent. So I don't really like that. You are still using government to enforce your will to make a profit. In my opinion, it's not really capitalism. I mean, you could argue it is, but it's capitalism with government action. So anytime there's government action, it's not really capitalism. Generally, that's what I believe anyway. Capitalism involves you willingly having to go wanting to spend money on that thing. If you're not willing to spend money on that thing, like I was not willing to spend money to go to my public school, right? The only people who were the taxpayers or whatever. And the taxpayers, I don't think they wanted to pay more taxes. In fact, there is no correlation between more taxes and higher education. There's absolutely none. In fact, some of the lowest funded schools are some of the best schools. The more funding a school has, the worse the performance is, generally speaking. And they get incentivized. They say, okay, you have low grades. Okay, let's give you more tax money over this other district. And guess what? The schools are incentivized to fail. So clearly the diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology doesn't work in a capitalist framework, because if it did, it would incentivize growth. It wouldn't incentivize stagnation like it is doing. And in fact, it actually forces the economy to grow faster because of this whole ideology. I think if we didn't have this whole diversity, inclusion, and equity ideology, there's nothing wrong inherently with it. I'm all for diversity. I'm all for equity. I don't really care. But the problem is when you tell people to do things, especially like, oh, this school district needs more money than this other one because it's performing less, and then you just give it more money and then not see the outputs are completely different. The inputs are what you count on, not the outputs. Then clearly there's no reason for it. You know what I mean? Diversity, equity, and inclusion will not help the society if you're going to have the same results or you spend more money on it. It's ridiculous. And that is what's happening in the United States. Our schools are funded through that system, through equity, trying to make things equal. The problem is it doesn't actually incentivize any personal growth. The outputs is different from the input. The input is what they're worried about. They're worried about the output is what they see, but then they put in an input, it's not working. Throwing money at a problem does not fix it. It's a cultural or social or something is definitely different with one school district over the other. Maybe you can get that more educated or more wealthy school district to go in to the poorer schools and see how to fix that. Maybe that would be the best thing, although school choice is probably the best thing you can do. I think voluntarily letting the kids and the parents decide what schools they go to instead of having a centralized school district would probably be the best bet. But anyway, the reason my school teachers don't make as much money is because they don't use price mechanisms to determine wages. And if we used price mechanisms to determine wages, teachers would actually realize how incredibly lucky they are. Because they should be making about 3 times less than what they currently are. The market rate for teachers, and I understand, teachers pay for supplies, they pay for things in the classroom. Guess what? So those little kids don't want to pay for those things either. They don't have the money to do that. So somebody's got to pay, and it's most likely going to be the teacher. And let me tell you, the billionaire class doesn't care. They don't live in that school district. Why should they be responsible for your own offspring? Or why should they be responsible for the teacher in that Those private property should not mix with public property. It's just That's the natural order of law. Okay, billionaires, well, yes, like, Jeff Bezos, right? For instance, I don't think he should be funding schools. In fact, I think he would have more influence over schools if he did that. Maybe I'm wrong. Right? Don't quote me on that. But if he funded schools directly, people would still have a problem with it. People say, oh, there's not enough money for schools. And then he funds schools. He's like, I want to push this certain agenda in school. Oh, he can't do that. So, what is it? Do you want Jeff Bezos to fund schools and push a certain agenda? Or do you not want him to fund schools and you can push whatever agenda you want? Although I think Jeff Bezos is probably for the education agenda, the equity agenda. But whatever, right? He's the one pushing minimum wage right now, so he can weaken Walmart and some of the other competition, because he knows Walmart can barely pay for minimum wage. Walmart's making a 3% profit margin on their stores. He knows that Walmart's struggling a little bit. Not too much. I mean, they still are destroying a lot of the smaller mom and pop stores, but yes, teachers will never make as much as an engineer. They'll never make as much as a accountant. They'll never make as much as things that rely on a price mechanism will always make money. Nurses, another great example. Half the time there's a price mechanism with nursing. The other time it's not. It's bureaucratic. But nurses still make way more money than a teacher because they're still needed. There's still a price mechanism in healthcare. There's not a price mechanism in education anymore. There just isn't. You look at Sweden. The reason why teachers make more in Sweden is because there's a price mechanism. There's competition between different schools. There's an incentive to have higher grades in certain school districts. The public schools in Sweden are competing against the private schools, and they're constantly improving each other by competition. Collectivizing things in the centralized school districts and voting on it democratically is not working. Democracy does not equal freedom, and it does not equal wealth. It does not equal higher standards of living. It does not equal equity. I hate this mindset that democracy leads to your freedom, that democracy leads to natural rights. It does not. It leads to tyranny. It leads to mob rule. It leads to two people cannibalizing another person. It's not a very good system. Democracy will never work. You look at the U.S. Constitution. They literally do not say anything about democratic. They say Republican form of government, meaning there is some sort of rule of law instead of rule of. It says rule of law with the public, kind of. There is some democratic nature to it, like the fact they do it democratically elect representatives, but those representatives are the ones that make the laws, not the people. Now the representatives can have a, what do they call it? A little like I forgot what the name of it's called, but they can give you like a list of like, okay, what would you like in the elections? They give you like a little list of laws you can vote yes or no on. And if you say yes or no on it, it's like a partition, I guess. They give you a little partition. They say, oh, California has it all the time. They're like, oh, would you want to ban this type of gun? And they leave a partition, and the Supreme Court just strikes it down anyway because it's unconstitutional. You can't just partition away your rights. You have to agree with, the Supreme Court has to agree with it too. So, but yeah, it's very interesting. And again, like, people claim, oh, if it's someone's right to own this gun, I should clearly violate it because I don't like the fact that this person owns this gun, because it could, if he loses it and goes to a different person that doesn't need that takes that gun away from him, and he starts using it to hurt people, I don't want that scenario to happen. And that could very well be the case. Maybe these liberals are correct in their assumptions with guns. I don't think they are. I think a lot of the statistics are actually twisted. I think a lot of academia is only caring about the centralized democratic process that they care so much about. Democracy does not lead to freedom, and I hate when people say that. And so school teachers are like, oh, let's democratically make teachers make more money than an engineer or not an engineer, but a nurse or whatever. Because we clearly we teach all these people who become nurses how to read. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that sentence, but the problem is the output's going to lead to devastation. The input, yes, it's totally wholesome and totally fair, but the outcome in society is going to lead to devastation. You're looking at Europe now. It's starting to, some of the countries that don't have school choice are starting to crumble. It's going to be a mess. And Sweden's going to be one of the last ones to crumble because they got school choice. Their immigration, they haven't been able to improve the immigration rate to have people speak native Swedish and English in Sweden. So it's not going to help Sweden too much to have too many immigrants because their culture is so different from everybody else's. But like, again, the reason why teachers don't make as much money is because the market doesn't really like teachers that much. This being frank, like nobody, it's like telling a kid, do you want to eat broccoli or do you want ice cream? The kid's going to choose ice cream every single time, and that teacher's not ice cream. Teacher's broccoli. And so that is the reason why teachers make less money than everybody else. Because of that. Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed this video today about me talking about why teachers will always make less money than most people. Yeah. You are someone, I am someone else, talking about why teachers don't make as much money as everybody else. Goodbye.